All right, welcome back to the Black Male Archives podcast. I'm your host Rodney Freeman, and we have with us Maurice today. Sir, how you doing?
Good, good. How are you?
Good, I'm good. This is a pleasure to get to talk to a sci-fi writer, a fellow librarian. So this is going to be a good show. We get to kind of delve into what you're doing with your work, and then also just your general perceptions of being a librarian. Of course, I'm a librarian as well, so we have that shared experience. So but before we get into that, can you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and your background?
Okay, sure. So my name is Maurice Broaddus. I'm a science fiction and fantasy author. I typically tell people I have three jobs. So one is as the author, one is as the librarian of a middle school, and then my third job is as I'm the resident Afrofuturist at an organization called the Kepler Institute. We do a lot of community organizing work. Most of it's focused around the developing young people into leaders and using social entrepreneurial experiences in order to do that. And so, yeah, it keeps me pretty busy.
Man, and then you're based out of Indianapolis, is that correct?
Indianapolis, right?
So
I've
are
lived
you
here most of my life.
okay? So where are you originally from?
So I was born in London, England, um,
Oh,
and then I moved to the States when I was young. So I was about 6 years old or so
okay.
when we moved to the States. We moved from London, England, to Franklin, Indiana. So as you can imagine, there was no culture shock at all
Yeah.
in that move. And then we moved from Franklin after a couple of years. We moved from Franklin up to Indianapolis, and I've been here ever since.
Okay, awesome, awesome. So tell us how do you balance all those three roles, right? And
Mm.
they have some synergy together, but how do you balance all of those three roles?
Well, I'm a lot better at balancing them now.
Mm,
At an earlier stage in my life, I had three different careers, and they were all in conflict with each other.
mm,
Because I was a writer still. I was also doing a lot of ministry work, and I was doing a lot of, and then I was also a scientist also.
mm.
Then after a while, you can only spin those plates for so long
Yeah,
before everything comes crashing down, right?
yeah, yeah,
So it all came crashing down. I was just like, all right, so let me reconstitute my life in a different way.
yeah.
And so I started with writing as the foundation,
Okay.
and then everything else fit in around the writing. And so when I
Mm,
first started working with the school, they were like, "Oh no, you're a writer first, so we'll work around your writing schedule."
okay.
And I was like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Exactly. Work around my writing schedule. Right, right, right."
Okay.
And then when I started working at Kepler, they were like, "Oh, you're a writer first." So and since Kepler is really big into self mastery and honing your gifts, they're like, "No, we need you to have that time and space to hone your gifts so that you can be a better service to community." So
Mhm.
it's like, all right, so basically everything revolves around the writing, and
Mm.
they give plenty of room for me to be a writer, which has the additional benefit of, well, as the career has continued to kind of blossom, I'm still in those spaces. So,
Yeah, that's
so it worked out for all of us.
that's awesome, man. That is really awesome. And it seems like you found your passion with writing. What led you to become a writer?
Well, basically, I've been writing all my life, so
Okay.
that's part of it. Because, like I said, when I did that move from London to Franklin, they had no idea what grade to put me in, and so they skipped me ahead because, like I said, I was young. I was barely six,
Mhm.
and they were like, and they could, so they skipped me all the way to they skipped me into second grade. And then they knew they should have probably put me in third, but they're like, "Oh,
Yeah, a
that's
huge
gonna be
jump.
rough."
Yeah.
And so my teacher basically just gave me a stack of paper and put me in the back of the room and just said, "Hey, just create stuff." That's
What?
Yeah, that's literally what she did. And so I'm thinking, man, American schools are great. Um, so that was kind of short lived. Eventually, I did have to do like actual work.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm knowing that in fifth grade I won an essay contest, and then when I was in high school, my teachers basically gave me my own curriculum because they were just like, "Look, writing is not a." Even though I was in like the AP English class, they were no,
Yeah.
we're gonna do something different for you.
Yeah.
So I had a different reading list, different writing assignments, um, probably just to keep me busy because they knew if they assigned me an essay, I'd finish, a 5-page essay, a 10-page essay. It didn't matter. I'm going to finish it that day.
Yeah.
That's just what I do. And they're like, because that just means you're going to goof off in class the rest of the time for this 3-week assignment. I'm like, absolutely, I am.
Right.
So yeah, so I had a different sort of curriculum for myself. But now when I start, so I was the first person in my family to go to college.
Okay.
And so when I went to college, my mom, who is Jamaican, key note right there, she said she wasn't going to pay for me. No, she wanted me to do something respectable. And writing did not qualify as a respectable career choice.
Yeah.
So that's why I have a degree in biology, because that was our compromise. And so I quit writing so I could, pursue my science degree and everything. But halfway through my college career, that's when it hit me. I mean, because after a while, just had to pick up the pen again.
Yeah.
I just had to write.
Yeah.
And then that's when I realized, that's when it really, really hit me, is that I have to write.
Yeah.
It's not something I just like to do on the side. No, I have to write.
Have to write it. Yeah.
And that's probably my big realization for college, is just like, no, this is me. This is who I am, and I have to exercise this gift, or I'll just go nuts.
Right. Because it's like there, and it has to come out, and it has to get out on paper and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Man, let me ask you a question. So, as far as young Black men wanting to write, sometimes I know I like to write, but I kind of get discouraged sometimes because I'm not the best grammar. I have the ideas, but
Right.
the grammar is not there.
Right.
Did you ever, as a Black man, did you ever struggle with others telling you couldn't write, or looking at your writing a little bit differently from quote unquote mainstream? Or I mean, I don't know.
Whew. All right, man, you're taking me down memory road right here.
Uh-oh.
All right, so here's the thing. So I came up as before I was writing science fiction and fantasy. I came up actually as a horror writer, and so and actually it didn't matter what genre it was. And I'm thinking back, because I've been in this game over 20 years, and 20 years ago, I mean, you could count us on one hand.
Yeah.
How many of us were in the field?
Yeah.
And so we were up against this all the time. And I distinctly remember several editors who would reject my work, or who would bump into me at conferences and stuff, and try to get me to, and they don't have really clever ways of saying it. Well, you have to write to the market, and language like that.
Yeah.
And I guess, so it's like, I guess we're going to skip over the fact that I'm part of the market. I am literally part of the market. So I am writing to market.
Yeah.
But they weren't going to see it that way. And I knew what they meant, and they knew what they meant. And so, and there was for a very brief period, there was a temptation, like, maybe I should be writing to the market. Luckily, I got over that very quickly, and I was like, or I could double down and make my stories even Blacker, and go that route instead, which is actually what I ended up doing.
Okay.
And because part of wanting to write also hinged on the fact that I wanted to write the stories I didn't have a chance to read when I was coming up.
Right.
And I never saw me in the books I liked reading. And so just like, no, I want to write the stories I wish I could have read when I was coming up. And so I just doubled down and went that route instead.
Yeah. So did you wind up, like, was it easy for you to find a agent, or did you wind up mostly self-publishing your own stuff? Or
no, I ended up, so I really struggled coming out, because like I finished my first novel in 2000, and I did the major edit in 2001, and then in 2002 was when I started shopping it around, and there was just no a Black horror. Oddly enough, a Black horror novel. Actually, the plot of the novel, fast forward a couple of decades, was very similar to Get Out. But back then, it was dead on arrival.
Okay.
It was dead on arrival. They were not wanting any part of that book. And so it was with the fifth novel that I wrote that was picked up by a publisher. And that was fine with me, because it gave me a chance, because there were problems with my early books. I mean, I ain't gonna lie. I mean, they weren't perfect by any stretch, but they had a lot of first novel problems to them.
Right.
So it's stuff that could have been worked out if anyone wanted to, make that leap.
Yeah.
So it was my fifth novel written. That was my first novel published. and by this point, it was my novel trilogy, The Knights of Breton Court, which was basically Excalibur meets The Wire. That's how I pitched it.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And so with that pitch, my publisher, the publisher picked it up, and I tell you what, so and it was ironically, it was a publisher from England that picked it up.
Mm.
And the first book was called Kingmaker, and Kingmaker made all sorts of splash media wise because of the cover. And I don't have a copy of it near me right now, but it basically featured a young brother on the cover. He had a gun in one hand and a sword in the other, and he was the King Arthur character. And we kept getting all this media coverage for this cover. And so one day my editor actually calls me up and like, why am I missing something? Why are we getting so much coverage about this cover? He like, this book does have Black people in it, right? And I'm like, yes, it's an all Black cast. He goes, and we put a Black person on the cover, right? And I'm like, yes. So why are we getting so much attention? And I'm like, because in America, that's not how it's done. In America, we don't put Black people on the covers because that's just the way the industry works. And it was, I still remember he was just so totally befuddled by all of this, but I'm just like, welcome to America.
Wow.
So that told you kind of state of which I was working in.
Yeah.
And I negotiated that book deal. I'd gotten that book deal on my own. I didn't have an agent. It was just relationships I made when I was going to conventions. I did pick up an agent because the contract they sent me was like 14 pages long, and I'm like, so I had an agent to get through that contract. But then my agent of record, me and her, we were together for about a dozen years. We met at a convention.
Yeah.
Because what I realize is that the typical way people get agents is they type up these query letters and they send them out, and they'll give a sample of the work, and then the agent reads it and and gives it thumbs up, thumbs down, that sort of thing. And that process had never worked for me. It had never worked for me. And what I came to realize is, so there's all of this, that is me, that is hard to convey in 3 paragraphs.
Right.
But if I meet you, oh, I got you.
Right.
And so I was at a convention. I remember it was 2012, and I was wearing, I was wearing this very loud red suit. I ain't gonna lie. It was a suit. You knew when I had entered the room when I was in this suit. And this young lady comes up to me and goes, "All right, that suit cannot be denied, and I can expense all my drinks." And so I turned to her and said, "I will never leave your side." And then we just started hanging out after that. And then and that was our introduction. And then like an hour into just me, her, and another friend just goofing off for like an hour. So then it was like, "What do you even do?" And she's like, "I'm an agent." And I'm like, "I'm an author." And but because we had hit it off and vibed so well right off the bat, it's like, no, this is it. This is the relationship. And then we stayed together for about 12 years until she retired from agenting.
Oh, wow. That's awesome, man. And then, that's very inspiring too, because, I think there's a lot of people who have good stories, and sometimes they like you said, they submit their query letters and stuff like that, and they get rejected. But, it seems like it was really just that personal touch that you had. And that advice of having that relationship with someone, I think that's going to help a lot of young authors out there.
Here's what I also realized, and this is another lesson I learned, is that relationship is if you start with that relationship first, that carries you a lot further. So, because like I said, when she retired, and here's how I learned that lesson. When she retired, the agency where we were at, they want to just pair me up with another agent there. And so we paired up, and it was because I looked good on paper and all this kind of other stuff. But we didn't mesh well. My ways of doing business, because I'm all about community first and relationships first. And they were just about, no, we're about them dollars. It's all dollars. And so I'm just like, look, money doesn't matter that much to me. I mean, don't get me wrong, it matters to my wife, but to me, money doesn't matter that much to me. I'm in it for the art and for the challenge and the craft and things like that. I have to be interested in a project, and it has to be a relationship I like, or else I don't care. I'm out. And they hated that way of doing business. And so they dropped me.
Mm.
And so for a while, I was like, well, you know what? I can just go without an agent again because I've been negotiating these deals on my own, and I had a whole lot of things going on in my head.
Yeah.
But then I bumped into my original agent again, and she sat me down and was like, Maurice, no. And so she introduced me to her best friend, who was an agent, and was like, and me and her friend hit it off immediately. And plus, because they had been best friends, she was used to my antics already.
Yeah.
Because my agent would always tell her the stories of, well, here's what Maurice did now.
Yeah.
And so because she was already used to it, nothing I do phases her. And so it's been a great match ever since. So
that's what's up. That's what's up. Yeah. See, this is good stuff. This is that inside information people really need to know, and they don't know how to go about getting it. So I'm glad that we had this opportunity to talk. Tell me about how did you weave in librarianship then? So how did you weave that in while you have the writing part?
So I refer to myself as first an accidental teacher and then an accidental librarian.
Okay.
Because it all started because I'm the father of two young boys. Well, I guess they're not young anymore. They're 20 and 21, but at the time they were young. And I knew who I was raising and what I was raising.
Yeah.
And well, because all right, here's a brief snapshot. So my oldest son, he loves your rules. Give him all the rules you got. Because his goal in life is to take all of your rules and bend them to his needs. That's just how he goes. So he was great in school. My youngest son does not give a crap about your rules. He's going to go through the world on his terms at all times and just stomp his way through life. And I'm good with both ways of going through the world. But I also know, the system isn't built for that. So I ended up shadowing the boys through elementary school and then middle school. Just sort of, I was always the in-house sub at whatever school they were at. And then my youngest son put the middle school through its paces. I'll just say that much. He put them through. Oh my goodness, they were not ready for him.
Wow.
I mean, we're talking like the first year he was there, he figured out a back door to the computer system and then changed all the passwords to lock out the staff.
Really?
I'm like, bruh, you can't do that. And he was so pleased with himself. Hey, Dad, come here, look at this. And I'm like, no, change it back before they trace us back to you. So it's all stuff like that. They were ready. And so he just pulled a series of antics in his 8th grade year that, I mean, it just shook the school.
Yeah.
And so I get called to the principal's office and I feel for sure, all right, I'm about to be fired. But she was just like, the way you handle the situation and walked your family through everything and all the affected parties and all the actual guilty parties, because someone had actually tried to frame my son and all of this. And said, the way you walked everybody through that, hey, can you just work here full time? And so that's how I became a teacher. And then the librarian went on maternity leave, and so I filled in for the librarian. And then the librarian was like, actually, when I get done, I'm going to go change and do this other thing instead. And so they were just like, well, since you're already the librarian, just go interim librarian. You can just run the library.
Right.
And so I was juggling back and forth between being a teacher and a librarian. But then once my career started really, really taking off, they were like, well, we're going to pull things back. You just be the librarian. That'll give you a much more flexible schedule. That way you can still stay here at the school. And just go from there. And so I was like, okay, that's great. And then, but then, after a while, I'm just sitting there going, if I'm going to be a librarian, I need to be a librarian.
Yeah.
And so, like, for example, so in the community, the Paul Lawrence Dunbar Library was in our building. It was the first Black library for Indianapolis. It was the community library.
Okay.
And it was housed in our building. And so I proposed, hey, why don't we restore that space and make it community facing? And so that's the project we're sort of embarking on now, is getting, over the next summer, we're going to be restoring the library, the original library, to its glory, expanding out the space and then making it community facing. And I'll hopefully be launching a writer and artist residency program out of there when we get it up and going.
Yay! That's so awesome, man. That's so awesome. You can tell I'm a librarian.
Right, right.
I'm like, yeah, that's awesome, man. That's really good. That's
Well,
good
look,
stuff.
well, here's the thing though. Librarians have played big pieces of my artistic journey too, though, because
Mm,
when I went to the very first, I'd never even heard of ALA, for example.
mhm, mhm,
And then when Kingmaker, my first novel when it came out, the company, the publisher sent me to ALA to be on a panel and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay,
mhm,
great. So I do the panel and everything, and it gets well received. And then when the librarians asked me, well, so what are you going to work on next? And I'm like, well, I'm thinking about doing this this historical steampunk type novel. And they're like, oh, okay. And I'm like, yeah, because the only other idea I was batting around was about a detective novel featuring two young middle school black boys.
mhm,
And like
mm.
the whole audience like leaned forward and we're like, yeah, you need to do that book. And I'm like, what, really? And they're like, no, that needs to be the book you do next. And that was the book I did next, and that ended up being Usual Suspects.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
and that went on to do really well for me,
Yeah.
and opened up my career as a middle school author. So it's like, so I keep forgetting that. It's like I write science fiction and fantasy, and also middle grade detective novels.
Man, this is awesome. So, okay, so the one thing that I wanted to touch on, because I know this is, going to be really popular with, you have this thing called Black Panther coming out next month, right?
Mhm,
But of course, this is part 2. But just the concept of Afrofuturism.
mhm.
Can you talk to us a little bit about that, and then your part in your role in writing
Oh,
Afrofuturist?
sure, absolutely, absolutely. So Afrofuturism is it's art. It's black art. It's art through the black cultural lens, and
Yeah.
except it's not just black speculative art.
Mhm,
It's about culture, and it's about it's in fact I like to think of it in three phases. It's about critiquing the present in a way
mhm,
that's rooted in the past,
mm,
but always looks to the future.
mhm,
And it's done through that black cultural lens. And so, and the term Afrofuturism popped up. Well, actually, it was originally coined in 1994 by Mark Derry, and his big thing why he coined it was because he found, like I said, this is 1994, and there's like 5 black people working in the speculative fiction field, and he just
mhm,
name checks them. There's
mhm,
5.
mm,
And then he said, and then he came up with the term Afrofuturism to describe their work. Um, And so, but I mean, but they just, and that was the 5 working in literature at the time. But I mean, there's this long history because Afrofuturism is what we've always done.
yeah,
It was what we've always done. I mean, we think back to like even W.E.B. Du Bois. He was a
mhm,
science fiction writer. Not too many people know that.
mm,
But he has a couple science fiction stories. One was published in one of the landmark Afrofuturism anthologies, actually called Dark Matter, which was edited by Cherie Renee Thomas.
mm,
And she published one of his science fiction stories.
yeah,
And I mean, it's what we've always done. It's been a matter of we're here, we're surviving this day, but we're always imagining ourselves in the future,
yeah,
into the future.
yeah,
So we look to like say the music of like Sun Ra or Parliament Funkadelic, and just
mhm,
the stories and the mythology that they created their music out of.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
we look at the visual art of Basquiat, and then we look at and then we do look at the folks who were doing it in the literary scene. So and we think of some of the modern folks like N.K. Jemisin. We always revere Octavia Butler, who was one of the
yeah,
people that Mark Derry name checked. We always go back to her, but Nalo Hopkinson, Nisi Shaw, that was that. I always refer to them as the Queen Ends right there.
yeah,
N.K. Jemisin, Nalo, Nisi, as on the forefront of this wave of Afrofuturist writers who
yeah,
opened up the doors for a lot of the folks who are doing it now.
yeah,
Um, there was a Black Panther anthology that came out last year,
mhm,
and even in that anthology, you saw about 20 folks who, I mean, we're just doing the thing now.
mhm,
We're doing
mhm,
the thing. So it's gone from name checking 5 to, oh no, you can't name you can't count us anymore.
right,
We're out there. We're doing the thing. Um, and as far as my role in Afrofuturism, um, besides being the resident Afrofuturist at the Kepler Institute, which is, again, it's art inspired by the work, and then the work gets inspired by the art. So, you know, we have that going on in our space. But one of the things I ended up doing was imagining, you know, this work that we're doing, because we do work in education, we do work in community housing, we do work in food, you know, all these different areas that we do, where we have environmental justice, we have the arts, we have all these different areas that we play in as a community organization. It's like, what does this look like in the future? What does this look like 100 years from now? And so I started imagining what all this could look like, and of course it led to, you know, obviously a intergalactic Black-led community, because why wouldn't it? And so that's what oh, here, hold on, this is book one.
Okay.
Sweep the
Awesome.
Stars. So the name of the trilogy is Astra Black. Astra Black is named for a song by Sun Ra, as a matter of fact. And I took the title Sweep of Stars from a poem by Langston Hughes called Stars. And so actually all three books of my trilogy are titles based off of lines from that poem.
That's what's up.
So yeah, so in that book, and I don't get me wrong, I do love this book, and this might be some of my best work I've done. So there is that too. But yeah, just imagining this possible future, this community that, you know, started on the moon but is now expanded out to Titan and to the outer reaches, some mining colonies, and then exploring life on the other side of a wormhole. And you know, we got starships powered by jazz music, because why not? And so all these different things is just me playing with my playing in imagination, and working alongside my neighbors, and, you know, as we all sort of dream together what life could look like, you know, 100+ years from now.
Man, this is so inspiring to hear your story, and your passion is coming through just about, you know, what you're doing. I'm so glad we had this opportunity to share this. What other projects well, you told us one project, but are there any other projects that you can divulge to us that you're working on right now that you want to share with the listeners?
I am working on the sequel to Sweep of Stars. It's called Breath of Oblivion.
Okay.
And then I can't divulge to other things. But my geek comic book heart self is loving some of the things I'm working on right now.
That's good.
That's all I can say right now. But
so that means that it needs to be a part 2 to this, so we can follow up when those other things come.
Oh yeah, you catch me by around next summer or so. I think I have some interesting things to share with you.
Okay, good. Well, I'm gonna hold you to that. Now.
Absolutely, do that.
I'm gonna hold you to that. Okay, so where can listeners find you on social media and follow what you're doing?
I keep it really simple. It's Maurice Broaddus. So it's mauricebroaddus.com is my website. If you look for me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, I'm always at Maurice Broaddus.
Maurice, sir, thank you so much for this. This is very inspiring, and it's actually really inspiring for me because I'm a writer as well. So I really do appreciate you sitting down with us on the Black Male Archives podcast, where we capture, curate, and promote positive stories about Black men, which you are one of. Thank you so much for this, sir.
You are so welcome. So welcome.
All right. Thank you. We'll catch you next time, and we'll follow up.
Done.
All right.